I'm available, so if you want me to grab.
Is Ron around?
Ron,
Swag?
he should be here momentarily.
Maybe he's available for that.
Okay, well, let's leave it empty for now and see what happens. Maybe we should-
Or Steve Layton.
Right. Okay. The April 1st meeting with the West Falmouth Village Association to update them on the Site 7 issues.
It's a Monday night, right?
It's a Monday night.
Monday night?
Virginia, they have something
Yes.
else on their agenda besides us, but they have us.
Fire station too.
Yeah.
Which Monday night?
That would be
April
April
1st.
1st.
April
It's
first.
right here on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So we don't all have to go. In fact, we all shouldn't go because we'd be posted meetings and all that. But
Well, they're expecting you and me.
okay.
At least that's what they're advertising.
You guys are billed.
You want to come too if you're
Board of
in
Health.
Columbia?
Yeah,
Board
Board
of
of
Health.
Okay.
Okay,
That-
and I leave on on the second and come back on the Friday.
You're no good.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm useless. It's taken me years of careful practice to get that point, but I'm glad I finally arrived.
To be useless.
Yeah.
Be useless and get paid for it.
Even better.
All right,
It's a
but
complete success in life.
Living the dream.
the two of us will go for sure, but we'll put the memo out so if anybody else wants to come, I know Ron might want to, and
Right.
if Wayne wants to.
Right.
But at least we'll have it covered.
So do you want me to send an email out about that, or
Yeah,
no? Here it is.
When we've scheduled everybody, we'll say who's going where, but here are the others in case any of you wanna come to the others.
Okay.
So, there's that.
And then there's the 27th at 9:30 in the morning. Anybody wants to come to Hyannis to the State Board of Plumbers
Oh.
and Gas Fitters?
Oh,
That's in
Oh, let's
Hyannis.
That is in Hyannis,
27th.
the
I
27th.
wish I could.
We are probably.
Hey, you should win.
I wish I could, I can't.
What do you got, play?
Yeah, we're going
In
to
the
a
morning?
play that morning. No, we're going by bus to Boston.
Oh, okay.
And
so
then
it's
Having
back.
all-
a
it's-
civilized
all-
day of a
It's a-
retired.
It's an ALL event.
You spend a
Kind of
day
play.
without wastewater?
I've been spending a lot of days without wastewater recently,
Good for you.
except to the extent that the wastewater was there in Virgin Gorda.
All right, so the 27th at 9 o'clock, what place?
It's at the Cape Cod Resort. And we will not get on the agenda likely until 10.
Okay.
Where later in the morning, they start at 9, there's 4 things before us.
And this is the plumbing board.
And this is the State Board of Plumbers and Gas Fitters.
And you've got them around your little finger.
I don't have them around my little finger, they are
Do you know?
rational men
Do you know
who
who's on-
listen to facts.
Do you know who's on the board? Any background on it?
I do,
Okay.
I do. I actually had a staff meeting, so I got to,
Good.
yes.
All right. Article 24 fact sheet, we did print up and send around, but anyhow, I haven't seen that, it's welcome to have one. Any comments for
Yes.
deletions or additions? As long as it can't be more than a page though, so that is the point of a fact sheet.
He was scribbling notes on this last
did-
night.
I did,
I'll vouch
I-
for the fact
yeah.
that
Okay.
he was looking at it before, so I think it was.
Yeah, the line that says, many still with cesspools where field systems cannot meet Title V standards.
Okay.
I had changed, I had, field systems cannot be Title, it's a redundant statement is what all it is. If your systems fail, there's a little sort of touchiness here, which is, I rewrote it last night, well.
Oh.
With
Send it.
hundreds, I will,
Yeah, as long as it's not an extra paragraph, then we can.
no,
we
it
can change
it was changing a couple words in here.
Okay.
Basically saying many still with cesspools and difficulty in upgrading to Title V standards or something like that, okay?
Okay.
I want to get the word failed out of
Out there,
okay?
yes, I
Because,
think that's a good point.
you know, some people
Okay.
can squeak them by still,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
Send it.
Yeah, I will, I will, yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Any other comments or corrections?
Other than that, I thought it was well done.
I made one change, which instead of saying won't alternatives alone work, to say will alternatives alone work.
Ah, excellent.
Aside from that, I found it quite well done. Okay, the motion.
There are no numbers in it.
If there aren't any other corrections or changes, can I have a motion to, what are we doing here? Endorsing it, I guess?
Move to accept the fact sheet as written with a couple of comments so noted.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You guys have it. Okay, acceptance of the minutes of March 7th. Everyone received them?
I'll have to recuse myself. Can we do it?
You were in Anegada.
So there are only three of you.
That's okay.
True enough.
No, it's okay. You have to have a quorum to convene the meeting, but
Okay.
subsequent to that.
Good, okay, good.
It's nice to know we have a parliamentarian here.
You were here.
I'm trying to think, was I here or not?
No,
You
you just
were-
came back.
you were here.
Just
I just come back, I think I was bleary-eyed,
Yeah. But-
testy,
but present.
and testy.
From
Here-
August.
You
here-
were
here-
testing.
We were all tested.
No, I was testy, I walked out of it.
Right.
We made up, we kissed and made up.
Okay,
Right.
move approval
We'll hear a second.
of the minutes.
Second.
Any conversation there? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You got it.
CDM Smith Tech memo.
Oh, CDM Smith Tech memo. Everybody got it.
Yep.
I got it.
Do we
I read
have
it.
any comments, additions, corrections?
Well, now that I've seen the minutes of that meeting are quite complete, which I think is good. And so the real question is whether ex post facto, you want the memo to reflect what they learned at the meeting, and I'm not sure that makes any sense. We might ask them to add one paragraph that summarizes their understandings following that meeting, because they walked into it, for instance, saying we're going to use all of the permitting criteria as a way of screening sites in or out. And part of the message of the discussion was that that's way too restrictive. You're gonna rule out things that could be potential, as one example.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're absolutely right, that what they produced may be accurate as far as it goes, but it doesn't reflect what they might have learned.
right, so maybe we just ask them to put in, I don't know what you call it, an addendum or a summary of,
Summary of the meeting.
a summary of what they felt were the main messages of the meeting.
Yeah, maybe summarize the comments of the commenters,
Mm.
which was us and the regulators, so that they would be reflected in this thing.
Comments of attendees,
Yeah.
The meeting points.
meeting points.
That's the only comment I would make, otherwise I think we can proceed. I haven't sent my comments yet. I'll have to do that tonight.
But the only other comment would be that the whole question of the state versus the federal and where one set of waters ends and the other set of waters begins. I think they should answer that question formally in the report. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Nate's issue.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I suppose they should. He thought it was important.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he said it was in the RFP as an important top point. I thought the answer was,
It was their reason for rejecting PRBs, as I remember, as an alternative
That's
to be
exactly right.
explored. So it
I
should.
thought the answer was great, but I'd like to see it formalized so that we have a thing to point to in the memo.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions regarding the PRB?
We were to send them to you.
Dear, you'll send it to them. Right.
Right, we just have the minutes reflect that I do not participate in the discussion.
Okay.
Me too. Yeah, since I wasn't there.
That makes two of you then. All right. Motion to, have we done the minutes? We done the
Right.
minutes. Anything else on the agenda? No.
No.
Reports, are we gonna have a report of members and staff?
No, report members in fact.
On the Conservation Commission last night?
How much time?
We have 15 minutes.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should
That is-
explain to the gathering
Yes.
audience what's going on.
You have just sat through an abbreviated business meeting that we dealt with our usual stuff. At 7, we're gonna put on the presentation of the 3 projects. For the next 15 minutes, we're gonna review what happened at the Conservation Commission last night regarding the shellfish proposal that the committee's been working on, and it was not all peaches and cream, but it will, nothing that can't be fixed, so here we are. I wasn't there, so I just heard about it.
Right.
Those who were there can probably,
Well, we started off with.
Why don't you sit here so you're
sure.
facing the
Studio
public?
audience. You have a live audience, not just a studio audience.
Right.
that's true.
Exactly. Here comes Ron.
Okay.
So we had submitted a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. Last night, we appeared before them. This was sort of the formal presentation of our request as part of the Oyster Project to utilize the end of Narragansett Ave, where there's an existing sort of pathway into Little Pond as the access point, to put cages into the pond and to be able to maintain those cages with the oysters in them. We did a little introduction done by Ron. Sia did the sort of the introduction of John Brawley. John Brawley walked through a whole series of slides explaining what the project was, why we're doing the project, what we're trying to measure, how we got to how we were going to try to measure things, what we would do with the oysters after a year in terms of having the shellfish folks relay them to other parts of town, most noticeably in portions of, I think, Green Pond. Was Bourne's Pond on the list?
Yeah. Can everybody
Greens
here who
Pond.
would like to hear?
Greens Pond and West Falmouth Harbor and Quissett.
Great.
And Great Pond, thank you.
Great.
We had previously sort of walked some of our projects through the Conservation Commission just in a general sense. And the Conservation Commission had a number of questions, but we sort of, at the beginning, realized that they were actually very concerned about all of the floating cages in the pond, as well as just our access. And so where we had already got permission from the two people we were accessing it, which fall under their 100-foot rule, they identified that we really should have notified everybody within 100 feet of anything we were doing in Little Pond under a sort of a formal notice. They call it the green card. It's a registered letter. So we basically got into, well, we need a continuation of anything we're doing here. And so we're going to go back to them on the 17th of April, which is a Wednesday night again. And we had a sort of extended discussion on why we're doing what we're doing, the validity of any existing data that's out there for water quality, what we've got for a sampling plan and whether it's a robust plan and will lead to usable results or not. The chairman had some strong feelings that maybe the existing data wasn't good enough and we should start off and not put any oysters in for a year or maybe longer and do some more detailed sampling to get baseline data. So we've sort of stepped back a little bit. We're regrouping as to doing a better job of presenting what the Woods Hole Group and SMAS and DEP have said about our sampling plan. We set up a time to meet with the chairman as well as a couple of people she knows from the scientific community here. I think you're going to participate in that.
We're going to see if we can do that.
Yes, trying to do that to get a better sense of a review of what we're doing and if we can make it better or more robust. As well as they had a number of other comments that I think are ultimately resolvable. The sampling and the strength of our sampling program from what we're working from the baseline going forward, it is a big concern to them. Whether or not it's actually technically falls under their purview or not was discussed by various members of the board back and forth, but we didn't necessarily challenge that or accept it. I think it's fair for them to ask a number of questions and for us to come back and do a better job of explaining why we're sampling and monitoring what we're doing, because I don't think we were really prepared for those questions last night. We thought we were giving them information to have in front of them, and the focus became the whole sampling plan. So I think we need to do a little better job on how we got to our sampling plan, what we're really measuring, and what we hope to be able to prove through that, and what chance of success we think we have statistically and why. With that, I'll leave it to Virginia or Ron or Sia to add more to that.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that with all of the demonstration projects that we are undertaking, and some of which we're going to discuss tonight, this is the oyster growing project for Little Pond that we're discussing at the moment, that from the meeting at the Conservation Commission last night. There is going to be a very consistent concern and attention to detail by the regulators, both the Conservation Commission and the Department of Environmental Protection, as to what's our baseline, what are we starting with, what's the condition of the pond, and do we know it well enough so that when we make a change, are we really observing a change, or are we just observing variability within the pond, that the oxygen goes up and down, temperature goes up and down, concentrations of nitrogen. And so I can see, it was a very good conversation, and it's our first, this is our first salvo before then. All of the things that we're going to be doing are going to go before the Conservation Commission. So I think it was a good dynamic to begin to get into. And we still have work to do, I agree. Yeah.
Well, I could just
yeah.
make a few comments. I think that, yeah, that it was I thought it was very useful actually in many ways to get feedback.
Yeah.
And we'll follow each of those threads, and I think that we'll find that we're in pretty good shape right now. And there are some elements to this. There is variability. We're working in a big system. It's not a lab bench study.
That's right.
And so there's variability, but some of the things we'll be able to clearly measure will be the amount of nitrogen and growth of the animals, of the oysters. That's
And
very
they didn't
clear.
disagree with that.
And we'll be able to look at transparency of the water. Those are, and we'll see basically if that improves and how it varies. So that there are a lot of elements that are, and that tells us a lot there, in addition to the robust monitoring program I'll be talking about later. But there are a lot of elements. And also, for the first year, we'll have relatively small animals in the pond, so the impact, because it's a 2-year growing period.
Right.
So the first year they're quite small, the impact is little. We'll be monitoring through the first year. It'll be kind of a baseline in a way, complemented by other data that SMAST will be providing at some point. So I think that as time goes on, as it sinks in, that all the thinking that's gone into it, I think it'll be better.
I think the key change, though, will be that there won't be as many oysters going into Little Pond this year. And there won't be the 2 waves that we were.
Well, there might still be.
Oh, there might still be. Okay.
For those of you that are walking in, just to let you know, the public presentation does start at 7. You're not arriving late. But we did have a sort of just a regular business component of our meeting starting at 6:30. We're summarizing a hearing in front of the Conservation Commission last night on getting approval for the oysters.
Yeah. Well, we have a month to work out all of these threads.
Right.
And that's a good time frame. And I really thought it was a very positive discussion. They put a lot out there, but I thought the tone of the meeting was good.
I think one other thing too is that we'll be doing much more engagement of the community through advising a lot more abutters than the ones immediately adjacent to the site. So that they'll be broader. But we have also met with the T-Ticket Civic Association 2 times and spoke with them about it and gotten pretty good support. So it isn't something so new to the community there.
Right.
Well, it'll even be less new after tonight.
Yeah.
One thing,
Rob has a question.
Yes, sure. Rob Adler from the EPA, who is
and one comment from EPA, so to speak, and the other comment is a personal observation. It sounds like you're going to be looking for more data, more information, variability issues and stuff like that. I was in Whole Foods up in Bellingham last weekend, and they're selling oysters from farm-raised areas here on Cape Cod from 2 other areas. I believe one's from Orleans. I don't know where the other one is from. But those operations may also have information that might help to support background kind of information, variability issues and whatnot. The other thing is when going around, and this is another question here, and I don't know if your Conservation Commission raised it, was looking at Little Pond today when I drove around, there were several signs up about no shellfishing in the pond. Could you have any comment about why there is none? Is that a bacterial issue?
It is closed. It is closed to shellfishing. It has been for quite a bit of time because of bacterial issues, which is actually one of the reasons why, as the town, we can go in there and do this program of raising oysters, because it's shut off from any shellfishing. Anybody that goes in there will automatically be stopped. And also, we don't have to worry about dealing with our efforts and some area that might be open to shellfishing and the cross thing. So that was actually one of the reasons to choose it.
And it's the first stage. We just grow them to a certain size, and then they're moved to another shellfish area
So one of the
for
things to
the
look at
6
is-
months.
I'm sorry.
For, just so you know, they don't get sold directly out of a little
And we'll be
pond.
getting into that during the presentation, actually.
Yes, that's true.
Sure.
That's true.
That's good. And I didn't know if the Conservation Commission has interest in that as well.
Did you want to offer anything from the meeting last night?
Just that I thought we had a great list from your email of,
Yes, it was a very good
of
email.
action items,
Yeah.
and I turned it into a list
Good.
that I am working through, and I just wanted to let everybody
It's
know
just,
that.
was my thoughts.
And there's a.
Anybody that wants to add or subtract to it, they're welcome
And I
to do
think
that.
the key point is whether we, I think it would be very useful. It seemed to me that the chair invited us to meet with her and other experts to have a conversation.
Right.
And we just need to make sure that that's procedurally an appropriate thing to do. And if it is, I'm very eager to truly clarify what kinds of parameters they'd like to see and what they're actually looking for and how we can satisfy. It seems to me we have 2 regulatory agencies that we want to satisfy, the Mass DEP and TMDL compliance and credit, and then our local conservation commission and what their needs, and we want to meet both of their needs. So we have to find out how that works.
And I've always seen that, we started off by saying, I think, Ron, you were one of the people, when you were speaking to the predecessor committee, they're like, oysters will take up nitrogen. And, the question always was out there, how do you get the state to accept that fact? And the difference in our system from everybody else that's been growing oysters is we are making an effort to figure out how to measure what the oysters are doing, other than just weighing them.
Exactly.
And so we are entering into an area for which there's not really a pre-existing model, and we are working our way along, which is the point of a demonstration project, to try to set it up. And we have a couple of years of time to do this, and as our data needs to, or whatever we gather for information needs to shift or change, we should be prepared to shift or change as we move along.
Good.
Okay. Well, the hour of 7 having approached, we haven't adjourned yet. But,
Well, we don't
we
adjourn.
don't adjourn until after all of this.
After
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Gonna
good.
Okay.
pull
But
up
we will move
Yeah.
and
it again tonight if you weren't doing that. Ron Zweig is going to speak on it after the introductory part, which is going to be presented by you, right?
I think, can you guys hear? Yeah. Turn on, okay. Coming out on a full picture spread. The Water Quality Management Committee and the Department of Public Works has been working very hard to restore Falmouth estuaries. From this aerial, you can see that there's a lot of work to be done. We have a wonderful resource here in Falmouth. We're defined in so many ways by the water bodies that we live near. There are 15 of them total. They are presently in a very bad state, and I think a picture is worth 1,000 words in this regard. This is a picture of Little Pond in 1950, an aerial photograph, and as you can see, there is a lot of undeveloped land. But by 2009, we had small 50 by 100 lots, pretty much corner to corner, up and down. And the result of that kind of development is an influx of nitrogen that cannot be assimilated by the water bodies. It is not as developed in the other estuaries, but it is a similar problem in all of them. There is excess nitrogen going into our water bodies, and it's causing a cascade of environmental problems that starts with algae growth and death and all of the things that are associated with that in terms of water quality degradation. We have learned from a number of studies, the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, or the MEP study, being the seminal work in this regard, that at least 75% of the nitrogen that we can control is coming from septic systems. So it's a big source. It's not the only source, but it's a very significant source that we want to try to control to bring back the estuaries to a healthful state. So the town has really mobilized around this issue because we all appreciate our estuaries so very much. And in 2011, town meeting authorized an appropriation of $2.7 million. And the purpose of that appropriation was to fund sewer design for that lower Little Pond area, as well as a host of demonstration projects to look at alternatives that might clean up our estuaries more economically, faster, and more effectively. So that appropriation was voted by town meeting, and then in an astounding ballot vote, it was also passed by a 2-to-1 margin in every precinct. That's remarkable because it shows a widespread, bipartisan, town-wide support for doing these kinds of projects. More recently, due to the incredibly hard work of the Water Quality Management Committee, we had a draft Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan approved by the Board of Selectmen, and it's been submitted to the state. This plan included a number of projects, and that's sort of the reason we're here tonight, to talk about 3 important ones. Shellfish cultivation, the inlet widening of Bourne's Pond, the sewering of Lower Little Pond, as well as denitrifying septic systems, eco-toilets, permeable reactive barriers, and road runoff remediation were all part of the plan. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ron to talk more specifically about the shellfish demonstration project.
Thank you, Sia. I think I can do it. It's okay. I think I managed it. Thanks. If I hit the right button. Anyway, thank you. Good evening. The shellfish demonstration project is basically a relatively new idea, but one that, in terms of looking at managing water quality in ecosystems, and aquatic ecosystems like these. And in Falmouth here, we have an enormous challenge, as C has outlined. So the town has been looking at a range of options as were listed, and one of them is shellfish aquaculture, and our focus has been on oyster culture, because oysters are probably about the most efficient shellfish for taking up dissolved particulate and planktonic material from the water column, which can help to clean the water column and reduce the nitrogen load, and also improve the oxygen conditions. And by removing those particles, basically, they can also help to improve the transparency of the water. And one of the target objectives of all of this is to restore the ecosystems. And one of the groups, or basically species, that we're trying to allow to reestablish in the estuaries is eelgrass. And eelgrass is a critical habitat for breeding of winter flounder and scallop and other organisms. So it's very important in that to the fishery as well. So there are many economic dimensions to this and benefits that can come from it. The one thing about the shellfish aquaculture is that it not only is able to address nitrogen loading from septic systems, in particular, which is a major impact to the Little Pond area, but also the other 25% beyond the septic loading from the atmosphere, benthic flux, and the Little Pond stream and others. And so in that way, the aquaculture, as well as inlet widening, you'll hear more about later, can actually deal with all of those inputs by working within the estuary, within the ponds, to manage that and to assimilate it. One thing about this is that, as the presentation will go on, is that we're looking at seasonal loads, particularly summer, And in summer is when we have the problems in the estuaries. We have the nutrients coming in, they warm up, we get a lot of growth of blooms of plankton, of bacteria, and those blooms end up depleting oxygen from the systems, particularly in early morning, and they also die and release hydrogen sulfide and other chemicals that create odors in the area, and so the summer is a critical time. In the winter, if you go to the ponds now, they look much better. It's cold, there's not much biological activity, yet the nutrients are still coming in. And those nutrients are coming in Little Pond. If you look at the water exchange rate in Little Pond, it's about once a month, the fresh water coming in will basically replace the volume in the pond through the year. So a lot of the nutrients then are going into Vineyard Sound through this process of groundwater seeping in and the Little Pond stream and precipitation. And then in the summer, we have the issue. So in looking at that then, we've designed the purposes of this program are to basically take this sort of dynamic aspect, and it's very much this is all based on science, but at the same time, we're speculating a bit. We know that oysters will grow and nitrogen will end up in the animals. And so we know that much nitrogen can be removed. The overall impact on the ecosystem we'll be studying, particularly from a water quality standpoint, and particularly a nitrogen standpoint, to working toward meeting the nitrogen total maximum daily load of the estuaries, which is the critical element in the regulatory world in terms of bringing the estuaries up to a standard. So what we're going to be doing then is to be looking at shellfish aquaculture in combination with many other options. And so we're looking at, obviously, sewers are being looked at. We're looking at the composting toilets, denitrifying systems, the whole list that CSF could be applied to any particular pond. And in that, if we look at if we took care of all of the septic nitrogen in the lower watershed, we would still have excessive nitrogen coming from the upper watershed north of Route 28. And so by doing some of these measures in the pond now, and if they work out well, then we can basically help to reduce the nitrogen in combination with these other interventions, and dealing with, as Sia mentioned, what's considered controllable nitrogen from the households, as well as fertilizers and other factors. So we'll be looking at that, and we'll be looking at the and then working in the future to determine how far we can go with this and to what extent. So the basic goals are to seed through aquaculture enough oysters to be able to see a detectable change in water quality. And we expect that in the first year, the change will be less. I'll be going into detail later. And then in the second year, because it's a two-year growth period, it'll be there'll be a much larger impact, and that would be the standard that we're moving forward. And working with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Division of Marine Fisheries at the state level, as well as the local commissions and departments here, will be looking over a 3-year period to try and see if we can create, actually through this demonstration, an idea of how many oysters basically you can get credit for reducing the total maximum daily load of nitrogen. So that's in a bit of a nutshell what we'll be looking at in this. We are optimistic based on experience in some other countries, as well as around the Cape. So one of the things is that looking for issues of having access to Little Pond, and we've been very fortunate to have some very good partners who are the Apsa family and the Shea family, who are on Narragansett Street. This drawing shows the location of Narragansett Street and the point at which we would be accessing the pond. So it will allow us through a narrow path, which you'll see in a minute. So here it is. This is basically the view to the access point. There's basically lawn going up to the pond, and then there's actually a drain from under the road that goes in at this point, but this would be the access point, and we expect to be mooring a small boat there for the to work as to work the system. One thing though is that this project has already started. Right now what we're proposing is the full demonstration project, but last summer we did a viability test just to find out how would oysters live in Little Pond in a culture, under culture conditions, and and also in Green Pond. And we had oysters in culture bags in the lower, middle, and upper parts of Little Pond, and we had almost a 99% or very high 90% survival rate. So they did very well. They grew fast, and so we got a sense, basically, on a very small scale. There were only like 3 bags that were involved. But anyway, in this case, we'll be using about 2 acres of area, and that 2 acres is right off Narragansett Street here, and it is, and that's the point there where we would have access. So that's basically what we're looking for permitting for, which we're in process with now. And then the oysters, there was a question earlier tonight about that Little Pond is closed to shellfishing. It is closed to shellfishing due to the high coliform bacteria levels. And those high coliform bacteria levels indicate that shellfish is not safe to consume. It's taken from waters of that nature, so it's been closed by the state. But we have, under the town, we have the permit to grow oysters there, and the state regulations are if you grow oysters in impaired waters like this, you need to, what they call, depurate them. In other words, you need to move them to cleaner water, and once they're in cleaner water, they will purge themselves of the pathogens. And this is standard practice that happens in many places. So Massachusetts has a 6-month period, and these are the sites where they would be moved to from Little Pond. So Little Pond is here. This is Great Pond, Green Pond, Quistit Harbor, and then up in West Falmouth Harbor, a couple of sites. So more specifically, they are, you can see this is the West Falmouth Harbor sites, and they would be put in areas that would then be very small portions of these areas that would then be closed to shellfishing for 6 months and then opened again, so that they will be basically used for both commercial and recreational use. So they'll continue growing, and they'll actually help to improve water quality in these other estuaries to some extent, just by their growth in those areas. And it sort of complements, and it's very much in line with this town's quahog seeding program that goes on every summer. You'll see upwellers in different places, and they take them and move them around, and they will be seeded in different parts of Falmouth for our consumption. Anyone with a license for commercial or recreational. And again, here in Quistit Harbor, it's another site. In Great Pond, Green Pond, these areas are basically what we use. Now, what's the approach? How's it going to work? Well, this year, we're working very fastidiously at the moment. There's a lot of things to do, a lot of permits to get, a lot of actions to be taken in preparation. But people, there's teams of people. Chuck Martinson is going to be leading this project. He's our shellfish warden in the Department of Natural Resources. And in this, we will be starting, though, in May with the first seedings of 1.25 million seed. And we talk about seed 2 millimeters. I mean, they look like sand, basically. They're so tiny, and they're put in upwellers. These are tanks that are on the shore. There's one at McDougall's that that we plan to be using, and that one, they then grow to about 4 millimeter size, or 5 or 6 millimeter size, and then they're moved to floating bags. You'll see images in a minute in a little pond, and then they'll have to be moved couple of times from different bags. And by October, we plan to be moving them for depuration of the first round. And then once the seed is taken, basically from the tiniest seed is taken from the 4 millimeter bags, they will then be started again in July. There'll be another batch that we put in, so we'll have them going in sequence. And these will be going along the same way until September. They'll be smaller by October, and then they will be kept in Little Pond and they will overwinter. And then in the next spring, they will continue growing. And as they continue growing, they'll be much larger. They'll be 40 or 50 millimeters at that time, and that growth will take up much more nitrogen, because as they get bigger, their absolute growth rate increases, and therefore the impact will be much greater in the second year. So it is, and then in the second year we'll be starting again in May of 2014 with a new batch. So it'll be continuously stocking and harvesting in rotation. That's the standard term, aquaculture term for that. Probably other production systems. This is one view of what it might look like. This is a very close view. The bags will be sort of in the middle, located more or less in the middle of the pond. They have a low exposure, and they are and they float on the surface. And the reason floating bags are used is because, as we know, with boats you get fouling. And so to prevent the fouling, or to control it, we will be having floating bags, and then once every week or two we'll go out and turn them over. And when you turn them over, the top part will be exposed, it'll dry out, and that material will then disappear, and then 2 weeks later, and do it. And as the water's warmer and warmer, it'll have to be done more frequently, and then as it cools down again, it would be less frequent. And this summer with the tests that we did, there was actually little fouling, but there was some, and we were working with turning the bags during that period. So here's what one of them looks like. It's got a couple of floats on it, and they are tied up in series like this, and then they are put out. It's the most efficient way of growing oysters, really. You don't have to go underwater. You don't need scuba gear. You just have to go along and flip them periodically. So here's what we expect or anticipate. When I say we, these calculations were done by John Brawley and the Woods Hole group. And from their estimates, which actually are correlatable to other estimates, the amount of nitrogen removed in 2013 would be 194 kilograms if it goes as planned, which is about 6 to 7% of the nitrogen load, seasonal nitrogen load in the pond. Again, the period when the ponds are most affected. But and then by next year, with the new seed going in, and when it says 0 for late seed, we would just be using the seed from this year to grow through. So we'd only have to buy seed one time, because we have the big seed from this year that would then go ahead. And the estimate is 766 kilograms would be removed from this 2 acres, which is 26% of the seasonal load. So this is a rather significant impact that's anticipated from 2 acres. This work. If you have any questions about this, Sia is here. Sia prepared this. Anyway, this is I plan to go through this number by number. No, but the basic thing is that it shows over time as they grow on a daily basis, practically, that how much nitrogen would be taken up, and to what extent the the estuary, or the water quality would be improved. So there are a lot of ways. This is one way that was looked at. There's at least 2 or 3 other ways that have been used to analyze this particular project. And so this is one tool that was used, and they all tend to complement each other quite closely. Now this shows there's a important monitoring program that's going to be going on, and these show the sites basically where water quality samples will be taken, and they are spread through it. This work was done by our town people as well as our consultant and Brian Howes at SMAST. So, and he's been doing a lot of the water quality monitoring in the area, and so it's very important. Also, we must thank Pond Watchers and FACES, the Falmouth Associates of Coastal Ponds and Estuaries, right? For the work that they've been doing to date, and this shows basically the sampling sites that will be done each month in Little Pond, or actually every 2 weeks, and the locations, and where you see a PW on there, if you can see a PW on there, it means that it's actually one of the Pond Watcher sites. So there's consistency. So we're building into the Pond Watchers program on this as well. And then there's some new sites that will be done. So this is the overall monitoring frequency plan. And then statistically, based on the monitoring program that's been developed, we have looking at the probability of detecting a 10% decline in nitrogen or a 15% decline. And so we have these based on the number of samples we'll be taking. But anyway, it's there is a good probability that we'll detect a change based on this. Baseline data is critical, and we're still pulling in some of the baseline data that's been taken in the last few years. Almost all of the work done in Falmouth, particularly in Little Pond, is from a 2006 report by the Massachusetts Estuary Project, but it's subsequent sampling, particularly by Pond Watch and SMAS, the School for Marine Science and Technology at UMass Dartmouth, will be used to bolster this and to make it stronger. The parameters to be monitored are a wide range from nitrogen, phosphorus, pheophyte and chlorophyll, salinity, dissolved oxygen, transparency, the benthic condition, looking at the animals, and other aspects. So it's going to be a rather robust program that should give us a good indication. Oftentimes you start out with very complex programs like this, and then when you get the knowledge of it, you can actually make it, wean it a bit and reduce the number. So, of course, we do get storms, and so we've prepared a storm management plan, and that storm management plan is would be followed if we had a hurricane or a serious storm condition with advance warning, and it would take probably just a few days to 1 or 2 days to remove all the equipment. So that could be done in advance if there's a serious threat to this area. And oysters can live outside in the air for many days if they're sheltered a bit, not in direct sunlight in hot weather, but they will clam up and they will wait. So until better conditions come. So anyway, so I think I'll stop there and okay.
Sir. Oh. David.
It's the natural variation compared to what you're trying to measure as a long-term, hopefully decrease in the total dissolved nitrogen level.
Ron advises countries on these matters, and we're happy to have him advising us, and he can answer the tough ones.
Yeah, that's a very good question to start with, David. It's tough. There is quite a bit of variability in the ponds. As I said, though, there'll be some key indicators we'll be looking at. Practically, I said earlier, actually not tonight, but one of them is that for sure we'll know how much nitrogen is coming out in the growth of the animals. So that much we'll be certain of. with regard to that. Secondly, the transparency of the water will be another relatively easy indicator to determine. In terms of the nitrogen and other nutrients in the water, there is a lot of variability in that. And there has been work done that shows that actually oysters improve the rate or augment denitrification. That's a microbial activity by bacteria, and actually remove nitrogen through denitrification, which basically purges it to the atmosphere, which is about 80% nitrogen or some high percentage. Anyway, it is a, but these are things that we'll be learning as we go along as well, much of this. So we'll get some understanding, so we'll be able to do what we can with regard to contributions to TMDL, meeting TMDLs.
Sir.
Couple questions.
Yeah, could you identify yourself, please?
Brian Donovan.
Brian Donovan.
Monot Road.
Monot Road.
Has there been any discussion of using mussels in addition to oysters?
Any discussion of using mussels in addition to oysters is the question?
Biodiversity. And my understanding is that mussels are even more efficient than oysters in regards to removing nitrogen. Maybe you can inform me better on that. And they're cheaper?
Yeah, they're cheaper, which is another side why we would go with the oysters to help support the program, basically. Okay. But mussels are good. I mean, there could be a diverse approach. We're actually looking at this in a complex way, and mussels may come into play ultimately. Okay. What we envision, though, is that oysters do best in the lower salinity areas. And so we would be working like the more northern areas of the ponds for that. It actually reduces disease threats to the oysters. In addition to that, we maybe growing more quahawks. It would then be seeded in the southern portion of the pond, and that would be, and they are very happy in the higher salinity. So we'll be looking at a diverse thing. But for the demonstration project to start with, we're going to work with it with something that we think is a really good option at this point.
Get it out of the park on the first one.
Further question?
Yeah. Sorry about my when they are removed, will they be replaced with more seed?
Okay. Yes, is the simple answer. But basically, it would be seasonal. Like in the spring, we would be replenishing, and then in the second year, and then by the end of the second year, they would be moved to the growth.
At some point, when they mature, sexually active, and do they start reproducing themselves?
Right. The question is when they become sexually mature, will they be reproducing and reseeding? Basically, yes. Actually, I have a video. I didn't have it. I don't have it here tonight, or I do actually. But it shows basically that oysters spawning in culture bags, and this is from Wellfleet. So you can see them that they'll do that. In addition, we just discovered that salt pond is, for the first time, the bottom is covered with oysters, and it's unclear why they suddenly appeared, but they are here. So yes, they do take care of themselves that way.
What the practice is, they take the old oyster shells and they have a practice of throwing them all back into the oyster bed, so that the young seeds can have a place to latch onto, and it actually helps reseed the next generation. Is there a plan to do any of that?
Before you, I just one clarification. I think,
Take them.
Yeah.
And say who you are.
Yeah, I'm Steve Rafferty. I'm also on the committee. I've been working with one. I think his question was whether or not we're going to transfer the oysters out of Little Pond before they become mature. And the plan is to move them out to deparation before they become mature. That's actually part of what we've got to do. We're not actually trying to establish a new population in Little Pond at this time. The conditions that we're working with the Division of Marine Fisheries and the boundaries that we're working in right now are to start with immature seeds and to relocate them for deparation before they mature. And then we're gonna bring other young seed back in on top of it.
Right, but you know, as Cole Porter said, you know, down on Old Cape Cod, even oysters do it. So.
Great question in the back, yes. Here. Let's get on the microphone so the nationwide TV audience can hear this.
Hi, Richard Mullen, Falmouth Heights. I believe the first speaker said that about 75% of the nitrogen load was septic system. And you were showing numbers that said that just about growing oysters and just about 5% of Little Pond could remove 26% of the load. So does that get us down to 50% of the load? And if we put more oysters in, could we not need a sewer system?
Well, I think that's a leading question. We in a way, anything is possible. We're exploring this now. If things work out, you know, stellarly, there might be a reduction in other systems. But I'm sure that there are going to have to be some upstream interventions, and whether it could replace them is we'll find from the demonstration. Not replace, but basically how we move forward. They could play a very significant role according to the estimates we have now.
They're sometimes when something seems to be too good to be true, it is, and that may be one of them. There's a difference between the seasonal measurement and the total year-round measurement, and that was explored a little bit at the Conservation Commission last night. If you're going on the year-round basis, which is the one that all the regulators are interested in, that 26 number is more like 13. But these are all guesses until you actually put these things in and see what happens. They're just guesses. The other downside of something that looks so too good to be true is oysters or any other shellfish have issues. They get disease, they die. Things can happen. This is all an experiment. You know, in a perfect world, if you could count on them all going there, you might be somewhere. But oysters or any other shellfish don't operate that way. They have their own lives and their own deaths, and that's what we're going to find a lot about by actually doing it, as opposed to just talking about it or reading about it. So that's why we're doing this.
At the same time, measures can be taken, steps can be taken, which is why we have an oyster aquaculture industry in this area to minimize risk. But at the same time, there always is a chance. All systems can fail one way or another. And but as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the nutrients with the water exchange are over the winter months particularly, do move out of the sound. So we'll have to see ultimately. This is a demonstration. It's research. It's an experiment, and we'll be doing more analysis as the data comes in.
David has been heard from. You right there.
Thanks. I work with oysters a lot. I'm a disease expert with oysters, and I also work with the growers quite a bit, Roxana Smolowitz. And I did want to say that they will start reproducing in the first year. There's always more reproduction as they get older, but they will start producing eggs and sperm within about 4 months of being born. So you will start to get some reseeding if the conditions within the pond are such that will encourage that. And putting down oyster shell is one way to do that, and with other things. And as far as disease is concerned, yes, disease is always a problem, but one of the reasons we have an aquaculture industry is because we can produce animals effectively, economically, which means that disease is a problem, but you can deal with it. And so hopefully that will happen here too, and we'll have a productive aquaculture industry in this pond.
Terrific. And David.
Hi, this is David Dell, East Falmouth. Last summer, I attended a program down at the Oceanographic Institution where I was discussing ocean acidity. Do you perceive that that's going to be a problem in this pilot test?
I don't expect it to be a problem in this pilot test, and the reason is that these estuaries have huge carbon loads in them, and there's a lot of, the pH is affected pretty heavily by respiration, basically, and carbon dioxide and bicarbonates that go into the water. And therefore, I think in the estuary context, we're kind of further along in terms of increased acidification. And we have shellfish. There are shellfish in Little Pond. The big problem is with shellfish growing in a good part of the pond is there's a lot of muck on the bottom. But there hasn't been, but they are there, and they're quite dense. In all of the ponds, basically, we have oysters growing, and quahogs in particular, all over Falmouth. So I don't expect in the term of this, anything can happen, but I don't anticipate during the term of this a testing period that we would be heavily impacted by that.
Okay. Any other questions on the oyster project? We have 2 more projects, so we don't want to gobble up the whole night with oysters. So, madam.
I'm a pond watcher, and looking at, and I love it. Maybe not so much at 7 a.m. in February, but going into Little Pond, I noticed where the oyster, the scat will be, and growing it. That's where we do our readings, right at that same spot on Narragansett. What I want to know is, should we be changing our site for testing? Will it be a true nutrient testing right next to what you're growing? I mean, you're going to have a higher nitrogen draw there, or what are you looking for in the whole pond?
Well, I think I can do that. No, please don't stop monitoring that
No,
spot.
I'm not
okay?
going to stop. No, but I
no.
mean,
The reason is
no, should we change our site for doing our?
No. Yeah, I can show you. Okay, I'll scroll. Yeah.
No, your site is going to be part of a whole group of sites. Your site's going to go away.
Yeah, there's additional sites coming.
Come on, you scroll back.
Oh.
Scroll back till you get to the sample.
The map.
Oh,
There you go.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
On Narragansett.
So,
Yeah, you're here right now.
Yeah.
Your LP, your
Yes.
sampling at LP2, I think Bleak is sampling at these 4 locations, more or less. More or less.
Okay.
And so last summer, we added, some more stations were added. We didn't sample as much as we should have or could have, which is a little bit of the answer to Dave's question about how much existing data do we have. But this year, as we do it, we've added more stations, including the ones we're already using. And we're going to increase the overall frequency of sampling, and we'll be working with the pond watchers about their stations, as well as.
Okay, but our data compared to previous years will suddenly, hopefully, be skewed. This will be successful.
We are hoping for that.
Certainly at that site, we hope for that.
That's the hope.
But that's the other reason for having all the other sites.
Exactly. I didn't know about the other sites.
Which gets back to David's earlier question about variability of data and how we're going to go with bigger data set to try to be able to see through some of the variability.
Thank you for your service, by the way. If the pond watchers hadn't been doing this, we would know next to nothing about these ponds. But because of the work you did, we know how much trouble we're in and what we need to do to get out of it, and that's a terrific help.
It's a wonderful way to get to know the town.
George.
Yeah, George Hampson. As far as the pond watchers are concerned, it's one of the first organizations in New England that has been established for water quality. And I think this is their 26th year. And the Coalition for Buzzards Bay monitored their program after that, and other organizations the same. So again, I'd like to thank you for doing your work. And I do mine on the other side, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We now, the Bourne's Pond project is the next one, and unless we get any more questions on this project, we will move on to that. Obviously, Ron and the rest of us will be around afterwards to pursue any individual issues people might have, but I think we've painted this picture as best we can for tonight, and we'll move on to Bourne's Pond. You got a mic for him? Where's that?
It is on, there you go. I'm Steve Rafferty, I'm the vice chair of the committee, and in the early reports done for the town, one of the things that was identified as a mechanism for improving the quality of the estuaries was perhaps to widen up some of the inlets. The principle behind this is pretty basic in that the nitrogen out in Vineyard Sound is lower than the nitrogen in the estuaries, and to the extent that you get good flushing action, you'll get better water quality in portions of the estuary. In the early reports, and consistent with any ongoing look at it, to the extent that opening an inlet actually does improve the flushing action, it's probably the lowest cost way of improving the quality of the estuary. And that is in comparison to building a sewer system to pick up the homes that are in that lower end. Two of the inlets became candidates for inlet opening, Little Pond and Bourne Pond. We focused more on Bourne's Pond at this time in the sort of the demonstration phase for a number of reasons, but principally back to kind of a science principle that you don't want to introduce too many variables into your experiments. So we felt going down the oyster path in Little Pond, we'd see what oysters did. And focusing on opening up Bourne's Pond a little bit, we could then see better if the predicted benefit of an inlet opening was as extensive as they would say. We think a 90-foot opening provides optimal flushing, and we use the money we've had so far to get some real basic engineering and sort of fluid dynamics of the flushing action work done to look at different ways of doing this. I'm going to apologize a little bit because I have not gone through these slides, so I need to see what's in them. Yep. Nobody in our group knows what they're doing but Sia most days, so that's a good thing that she's around. So this is just a little graphic here to help everybody understand this. Blue is good. Red is not so good, and for those of you that are sitting in the back, the scale is really the nitrogen concentration over any time. When we get into the light blues, we're at 0.45, which happens to be the boundary condition based upon the MEP reports. If you can get it lower than 0.5, it's good. The top boundary is about 0.85. And so as this runs, and it's sort of hypnotic, it's kind of like we refer to it as the Water Quality Management Committee's lava lamp. You can see this is showing how far with the inlet opened up to about twice its current width it goes. And so it's this area, these homes down at this end here, that now can, if we start thinking about the other way of remediating the nitrogen, maybe don't have to have that way, whether it's permeable reactive barriers or sewers or some other technology we're looking at. So what we spent money on so far is looking at the best arrangement for this. We looked at, Virginia remind me, with 4 different configurations. And we costed them out, you know, what to do with each side, the riprap, the piers, you know, should we put 2 culverts in, what should we do? And this is basically a schematic plan at this point. It's not a detailed design. Nobody's done all the structural work or figured out all of the nuances of this. But the hydrodynamics of what you saw before is based upon this configuration. Permitting it and doing the detailed design to get ready to go to construction, we estimate, based upon everything we're looking at, about $700,000. That's part of what's in the article we're going to town meeting. The design on this case is actually the smaller of the numbers. There's a lot of issues when you open up an inlet in terms of permitting. There are coastal zone management considerations. There's Army Corps of Engineers consideration. There's going to be a lot of need to demonstrate from that pretty little graphic before what that means both during a nice day and during a stormy day to make sure we're not making anything different in a negative way from what it is now. We're hoping to make it different in a better way. We have not spent all the money that we got in the first funding round, if you will, on this issue. And so therefore, as we're going to town meeting at this time, we're only asking for an additional $300,000 for this element. That's all part of the roll-up number because we've been able to get this far on this one fairly efficiently. Bourne's Point is pretty easy, but turn the lights on, I guess.
Or around 30 years ago, remember the first time the town opened Bourne's Pond, and it took 5 years of permitting to persuade the state and all the other agencies that having an opening that didn't close up at every storm was a good idea. And they fought us inch by inch, and poor George Souza, who carried the ball on this subject, just went home and cried some nights because it was just relentless. But at the end of the day, the town got the permits, it built the bridge, and the pond improved immensely. So the problem at the time was the original design they had for that opening was 90 feet. Along the way, the town got talked out of doing 90 feet and only did 50. So if they had done the 90 back then, we wouldn't be talking about it now, but they didn't. So here we are 25, 30 years later, trying to do it right again. The project also will involve rebuilding and slightly extending the jetty that's on the west side of the current channel opening. That will help the sand on the beach stay on the beach, and the sand that comes along the littoral drift, they call it, stay on the beach. So the Minot Beach will get bigger, and the sand that is currently dropping off the beach and showing up in the pond will stay on the beach. So there is a side effect that people in Minot will be happy about. Any questions on this? Sure. We got a mic for you.
Anthony Spagoni from East Falmouth.
Oh, we know you. Hi, Anthony.
I'm wondering if you remember, about 50 years ago, there was another opening where the old bridge was. That
Right.
The Minot Road used to come across, and by erosion, the ocean, you had to move all the Minot Road over. But there was another small opening there. That may be more efficient. I don't know how the scientists look at it, or the engineers, but it may be more efficient to have two openings, and maybe we'll get better flow. If one blocks up, the other may work better. Has that been taken into consideration?
Yeah, we actually looked, when we said we had 4 different options, we looked at not exactly that option, but we did look at a variant that was in essence sort of 2 separated, for lack of a better word, large culverts. Part of that thought was that it might be easier in some construction features, but when we got done with it in terms of the cost and a number of other factors, it didn't bring any measurable increase in the flushing action, and it actually was a more expensive option. And part of the concern was in these things, you don't want the sand to deposit in there and plug it up. And it turned out with the twin options, there were some concerns about what would happen. So that's why we moved away from it.
The area you're talking about where there was an opening once upon a time, that was the one that was filling up at every storm. And George Souza went out and looked at historical pictures of Minot Beach, and he found that the original opening was actually right where it is now. That the one that plugged up was sort of a later variation that never really did work right. And so where it is now is where it had been historically, and probably is the most efficient place for it to be, but it needs to be wider to do the job we're asking it to do. David?
This is David Dell. Is there any potential complications when you widen the opening from the storm surge that would be associated with northeasters or hurricanes?
Great question. When I indicated that we have quite a bit of money set aside for the permitting, that's to go to the next level of looking at exactly what happens in the wider opening from various storm surges to make sure that while we're trying to do good, we're not doing worse. So it is in the next round of looking at it further and understanding it better.
Sir?
So that same question,
And then you.
are there any,
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, Chris Shea, I'll follow up on that question. Are there any, is there any studies that indicate other communities that have done this and what the ramifications have been?
The answer is yes.
And?
I believe that there's an inlet opening project that has been completed over on Martha's Vineyard. Much like we're saying, we're looking at this very closely. They looked at that very closely, and it's followed along pretty closely with what they say. Nothing negative has fed back at this point. I think they're in, I don't want to say this exactly, but I think their second year after doing the opening. So we've had some rough winters here. I don't have that numbers. I don't want to speculate, but it's not a small one. I think it's a nominal size one. But our initial work on this, going to this question about what happens, it wasn't just a casual look. There, we talked about things. I think we're also, and Virginia might be able to help us, we're going to try to put some tidal gauges in to get a better data set on tide in that area. Is that what we're doing? I mean, all of these things require gathering a little more data and getting better set up.
Virginia Valiela of the committee. We are gathering more tidal data, and the U.S. Geological Survey is interested in this for many reasons of their own. And so we will, as we go through the permitting process, be required by Corps of Engineers or the Conservation Commission to develop certain kinds of data that they think will inform them, again, as to whether there are going to be any negative impacts. So that's a very obvious one.
Yes, but that says this year has been a very bad year for northeasters.
Yes.
So the project in the vineyard now, what shore was that on? Is it South Shore or North Shore?
If you give me your name and everything, I'll try to track down as much information as I have, and I'll gladly email it on to you or tell you who you can get that from, okay? I haven't memorized the project. I'm aware of it.
Yes.
Right. And Chris, just to amplify on that, northeasters obviously come from the northeast, and this is the South Shore. The Barnstable County Cape Cod Commission has been working with the town of Yarmouth and the town of Barnstable also to do widening, and they're all on the South Shore side. I don't know the Martha's Vineyard example, but Parker's River in Yarmouth and a small pond, I don't know the name of it, in Barnstable, were also proposed as candidates where widening would make sense.
I remember when the current opening was permitted and the regulatory agencies were, in the course of their 5 years of deliberation, were very particular. They asked every question you could possibly think of, and then they would ask a question like, prove to us that if you open this inlet, all the water in the pond won't drain out. But don't tell them. And so they leave no stone unturned in their questioning. And I think the fact that it's worked for 30 years is pretty good evidence that we knew what we were doing. Sir, back there. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Danis, East Falmouth. Is there a dredging component for Bourne's Pond to tie with the inlet widening?
Yeah, there would have to be a continuous, regular dredging to go with it, because you're right, that channel at the entrance to the pond would tend to fill up if you didn't periodically dredge it. And so that would have to be part of the solution. Absolutely. Yeah. Hi.
Michael Battello, East Falmouth. I notice you have a flat bridge there. Now, we're going to take in consideration that this bridge is one of the closest ones to the ocean. So my question is, would you get a better flow by having an arch bridge rather than the flat bridge there? Because being so close to the ocean.
The engineers looked at the bridges, and one of their earlier suggestions was a higher one, which would have had lots of issues, retaining walls, all kinds of things. So the answer was basically no. It's still short enough that it doesn't need to arch up for the cars. And there was always a concern that you didn't want to make this too accessible for boats. Certainly that was George Sousa's premise, that this was going to be for shellfish and rowboats and not much more. If you start making it higher, you've built a lot more bridge at a lot more expense, and you've opened it up to a lot more boats, which kind of defeats the purpose of cleaning it up. So the recommendation we got from the engineers was keep it at the level it is, but just make it longer.
Yeah, one of the aspects in the screening work and developing this concept was whatever gets built has to be able to withstand the storms we see here. There was the issue of height and approach ramp and how far you'd have to extend, sort of the strengthening and like Eric said, the retaining walls. And so this was a balance of something close to the existing heights and the approaches and having it solid enough to anchor it down. The engineer at the time, and you can take whatever you want to from what an engineer tells you, being one I can say that, they said under the occurrence of a major storm that possibly the only thing left standing down there will be the bridge. But we haven't designed it and or built it yet or proved that statement.
Mr. Smolowitz.
What are the engineers assuming for a sea level rise for like 2050? And what is the, looking at the whole south shore of Falmouth, what do we have for the road heights throughout the various pond areas, between Little Pond and Green Pond and Bourne's Pond?
I'm probably going to turn to Virginia again because she worked a little closer, but we have been taking into account some factor for changes in the elevations due to
the matter of sea level rise has come up in discussions about most of the different kinds of alternatives that we're looking at. And so it's on everybody's radar screen, but it has not gone to the point of saying, well, Surf Drive and Minot Road and all have to be raised because sea level rise is going to not make them functional, and that also extends the discussion on the bridges. The main point the engineers made was, which was just referenced earlier, that if we have a really major storm, the bridge will stand, but the water will come across the roadway. So you will get, you already see that in Little Pond when we have a major storm. It comes across the roadway, goes over the culvert. So this bridge wasn't designed expecting that there would be a major sea level rise, this is now my personal comment. It's taken a long time to have the general public and have governmental representatives take sea level rise seriously. But I think that has now taken hold, and so as we move forward with actual design and permitting, I think that conversation will come back on the table. And so this may end up being a foot higher or 2 feet higher.
Well, a foot higher or 2 foot higher isn't my concern. My concern is that I haven't followed sea level rise to any great extent. I don't know how high that road is throughout the various portions of the road. I mean, I grew up in Rockaway, New York, which, the ocean meets the bay a lot of times. What my concern is, from a civil engineering standpoint, is we have all these ponds and we have a range of projections on sea level rise. By the year 2050, we might be in a position where we have to make a decision that we have to spend a huge amount of money to raise that entire waterfront road, or that road disappears and all the access are just the vertical paths. In that case, we don't need bridges across the inlets. And then the other part of the is that any groin or extension of anything is going to impact all the inlet entrances. So while we're looking at just Bourne's Pond for the purposes of this demonstration, and I'm totally in support of the concept of inlet widening and dredging, that somewhere along the line here we have to incorporate a bigger picture view, at least in a preliminary fashion. It might not be the comprehensive, wastewater management process, but there's something. We're a water-based community. We have a huge amount of estuaries. We should start thinking about what's going on here before we start building groins and bridges. Now, that being said, the demonstration project should move ahead, but I'd like at least to know what the range of, you know, for 2050, are we talking a 5-foot rise? And if we're talking a 5-foot rise, we might be spending some money on something.
I maybe can't project to 2050 yet, but there has been quite a bit of ongoing thought around what happens with the sea level rise and where it occurs. We're seeing numbers any place from a foot to a little bit less than 3 feet along portions of this east coast here when you get into the data a bit. Interestingly, if you can imagine swirling the water in your coffee cup, it rises higher on the edge than the center, and so some of the places that are going to suffer the most from sea level rise are along portions of the New Jersey coast and going down to the Carolinas in the United States because of the way the ocean currents circulate. But I think the number, Ron, that has been shuffled around a little bit is as low as 6 inches and maybe as high as about 30 inches, depending upon how far out you go and how fast the polar ice caps melt. Of course, the worst projection, I can produce the map for you, says that if the polar ice caps melt on both ends of the Earth, the dry land is north of Providence and up by the Blue Hills. So these questions will all be moot if that goes forward, but that's a real projection of where all the water goes to when it melts.
Ron.
Too much information.
Thanks, Eric. I just, Ron Zweig, I just wanted to make a comment about that this, like the shellfish, actually addresses the full spectrum of nitrogen entering from the rain, from precipitation, from runoff, from septic seepage, from decomposition and everything. And it's one of we have these two that have that capacity to deal with all sectors of the nitrogen loading in the pond, in the estuaries. So it's an interesting view in terms of the calculations and how we look at this. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So we have two. Thanks.
Sure. Right there.
Oh.
Carl Walker, East Falmouth. Have you made any effort to put anything on the bridge for access for fishermen in the new design?
Yeah, the bridge would be wider. There would be sidewalks on both sides, and the travel lane itself would be wider than what's there now. So there would be room for fishermen, absolutely.
Is it access similar to the Green Pond Bridge, or is it just a walkway?
It wouldn't be an additional sort of, like Green Pond kind of is a special add-on for fishermen. This wouldn't be that, but it would be a 4-foot wide sidewalk on both sides and a wider travel lane. So right now you don't have a 4-foot wide sidewalk on either side. So there would, if fishermen can survive on a 4-foot wide sidewalk, they're going to like it.
But if you look at the fishermen, there's probably 4 people maybe on Green Pond at any one time, and dozens at Bourne's Pond, because that's where the fish are. Right. So I would hope that you'd relook at that.
Sure.
Get with the boating access people in Boston and look for some money for a grant, because we have fences up there. We're trying to stop people from fishing there because it appears to be unsafe now. But it's a perfect place to have that kind of opportunity.
We'll tell the engineers, presuming town meeting and the voters go with this, that we want a fisherman's accommodation as well. Absolutely.
Based upon your experience, upstream or downstream side?
Where are the fish?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the Bourne's Pond?
Just a quick question along the same lines. Is there a bike lane on both sides as well?
No, just the white line, fog line, which I think is...
Yeah, where there's no bike lane.
Yeah, one of the things that happens here, this is back to what I would say the permitting discussion. We're going to have competing interests. We're going to have the fishermen want a wider space, the bicyclists want something, the coastal zone management people are going to say, make the bridge narrower. We've chosen a size now to get to a cost estimate. We're going to have several factors in here. I think our goal is to give the town the best bridge in that space that has the most functionality, but we have to get a permit to do it. So we're going to have to play some balance here.
Right. if you put everything on that you want, it's going to be wider than it is long. But, but we're hoping to avoid that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think one more for this pond opening.
I know you said, and I didn't listen carefully, I'm sorry. You're going to extend one of the breakwaters to groins with
Right.
this, the western?
The western.
I don't know how many of you have looked on Google Earth and look at the history, and you can watch the change in the shoreline all along here. It's pretty dramatic. I live over in Minot, and watching Washburn Island really take a turn and go to the north, the southern, the T area of Washburn. And it's because of the scouring from all the groins along the island. Has a coastal geologist looked at this? I'm sure it has. Sorry.
Yeah, I think again, we've done some work, but not all the work. And part of keeping this opening from filling up involved some work that said extending that groin a little bit, for exactly as you're saying, keeping it fluid where we need it to be fluid, and trying to keep it trapped give it a trap where we can trap it is. So when Eric earlier was talking about, he was talking about maybe the more visual effect you'd see, that maybe some sand will be trapped on the beach side. In fact, the reason for doing that is to keep the channel open as much as possible and get the maximum flushing.
Will you angle it to the southwest? The only set of groins that seem to be successful are the Wacoit jetties. They've been there for, I don't know how many years, but a long, long time. And that has not filled in anywhere near as much or as often as any of the other. I mean, we get dredged. We just finished dredging in Minot, and it's all on the public beach now.
Well, one of the big advantages of having these type of meetings is getting this type of input. We got from the people that did the work their understanding and input on the direction of the littoral drift, the currents, and everything. We are going to get into a detailed phase on here, so your comment about the angle of that and comparing it to what happens up at the other jetties, where the Google Earth is showing to you that they're more effective, we will definitely carry forward and get some feedback whether how much they've gone to choose the angle they're going to choose.
Well, it's probably all changed. Changes yearly, I would assume, but
You got a good point there, and the engineers will know about it.
the angle, I think, is critical.
Yeah, no, loud and clear. Mr. Finneran? Oh.
I didn't recognize you, Mark. I thought you were supposed to be on the left-hand side.
All right. Any other comments or questions or suggestions about this? Ron?
Just another quick question about dredging. So when you're going for the permit, you're talking about dredging for channel depth maintenance. Is that the reason maintaining channel depth?
But in this case, it's mostly the sand that drifts in and sort of stops in the pond just beyond the bridge.
Right.
Left to its own devices, will just keep piling up, and it's to get rid of that.
Okay.
It's not to make it deep enough for boats.
No, but I mean, it's maintaining a depth.
Yes.
The other thing, though, with the ponds that we have is that we have the bottom that is, I don't want to use the term, let's call it anorexic or anaerobic, and combination of, I guess, its ecological functions have been compromised in many ways. And I'm just wondering if we could get dredging permits to basically clean out restore the bottom to a condition that will allow reseeding of shellfish, regrowth of eelgrass, things like that. So it's not really maintenance dredging for the purposes of depth, but it's maintenance dredging for the purposes of starting over. It's a restoration, if you will. So I'm just wondering if that has been considered in the permitting process.
Well, first off, in this exact location here, the bottom conditions aren't as anoxic as they are in other places, because there is some flushing action. on the bigger picture, Ron, the issue of cutting back on the flow of nitrogen to the estuaries is what we're most focused on. The issue of nitrogen out of the benthic flux off the bottom as being another step later on. Once we've cut off the nitrogen, we'll probably pick that up on an estuary by estuary basis once we've cut off the flow of nitrogen going in some way or another, and taken a look at the level of restoration rates. I know from experience in portions of Boston Harbor, which had relatively good flushing, the restoration rate was pretty fast for portions of the bottom, whereas other upstream areas have been less rapid and people have considered things over time. But what you're suggesting is tackling on something that we have not definitively got on our list of options right now, because we're focused on cutting back on the flow of nitrogen first, and then stepping into the next level on each one of these estuaries.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I don't quite understand. It seems to me that you'd want to be restoring the estuaries to start getting immediate benefits, as you know, because the long-term issues, there's a lot of nitrogen flowing down for the next 20 or 30 years, even if we cut off the inputs now. So it seems sort of strange that we're not in a process of trying to restore the estuaries, and you know, why hold off on that and wait until we cut the flow? I mean, we should be working on both at the same time. Restoring the estuaries, if you can go in well, Little Pond more so than Warren Pond, but just dredge out the muck, and in the case of Wacoit Bay, we've had turnovers there where, you know, the algae blooms and then dies and falls to the bottom, and we're not allowed to break it out or remove it. It would seem that we would be able to get permits to maintain the ecological functions of our ponds and restore them, while at the same time that seems to be a lot cheaper upfront benefit, and at the same time working on the long-term solutions of cutting the flow in. And I just didn't understand this missing component to this whole project. If we're concerned about the estuaries, why not just work on restoring them as well?
A little bit of this is what comes first. So under the suggestion you're putting out there, which we've heard from various people along the way, take Little Pond and we go in and we spend time, energy, and money getting all the permits and dredge all the bottom material out and restore the bottom material the way it needs to be. We've now still have the nitrogen flowing in. You will still get that layer that has built up over time. It will immediately start building back up again unless we keep an ongoing program of dredging and cleaning out of the system in place, or improve the biology of the system. And to improve the biology, we would need to reduce the amount of nitrogen flowing in again. So that's, I think, why we're starting off at trying to cut back on the nitrogen side, rather than dredging it out, declaring it to be healed or restored, and then seeing what happens later.
Mr. Finneran.
I just kind of like to make a note or add to what Mr. Smolowitz had to say. We have some of the largest number of ponds on the Cape, yet I think we're the second lowest in use of the Barnstable County dredge. So there is a problem there. They're in the process of funding a second dredge, so I think that it's a very valid point, and we should look into maybe utilizing that a little bit more than we do.
Absolutely. Dredging is easy to describe and hard to get permits for. Most of the dredging they do now tends to be maintenance dredging of existing channels, and even that involves a very narrow window for permitting, and the harbor master will tell you what a hassle it is for him to even dredge the existing channels. To come in and ask for a permit to dredge a whole bottom of a whole estuary would be a major permitting nightmare. Well, I think we have enough stuff that isn't easy right now, but we'll put that on the list, because really, if I were God, I would just come in here and do exactly what you said.
You would have to work with Firmament.
But we have a Conservation Commission and the EPA and DEP and all the rest of them who would not go for that. So I'd love to see it happen, but it's a hard one to, with those barriers.
I might put somebody on the spot here who's from the EPA and has been spending a lot of time looking at very sort of creative things. Have you ever seen a case where somebody's gone into an estuary and dredged out the entire estuary with the exception of a Superfund site? I mean, if so, we might consider this. But I don't think I've seen them.
New Bedford Harbor would come to mind, but that's been 15 years in the making, and,
Yeah, and
there's
that's a
still
Superfund
controversy
site.
on
That's a
that part
Superfund
of it.
site, and they
It's a
haven't made much
Superfund
progress.
site for PCBs.
Yeah.
Superfund site.
Otherwise,
$100 million.
the best folks to speak with is not myself, but more the Corps of Engineers and their permanent
No, but you
regulatory
keep
group.
track of these things, and if there's somebody had done it, you'd say, oh yeah, they tried it here or there. So thank you.
If I do know of any, I'll inquire.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any more on Bourne's Pond opening? Okay. If not, we'll move on to the third piece, which is the Little Pond
Let's see.
Sewage Collection System.
Yes.
Virginia Valleyella.
So, all right, Virginia Valleyella again. And to put this in context, Article 17 that was passed unanimously by town meeting in 2011 worked on a dual path, explore many kinds of alternatives, but also look at sewering the Little Pond watershed. The article funded up to $500,000 of engineering to work on that issue. Why Little Pond? Well, the picture tells you that's the fish kill from this last year. It is our most degraded estuary. Partly because, if you remember the aerial photograph that you saw earlier this evening, it has the smallest lots in town, and many of them are just 5,000 square feet. Again, from that picture you saw, it is almost at build-out. It means that every lot that was created has a structure on it. Some of them are seasonal, some of them are year-round, but the point is the area is almost virtually built out. Many of those homes still have their original cesspools. They've been passed down through the families. So they don't even have the Tidal V septic tank, which allows for a certain amount of removal from nitrogen if you maintain it. And then lastly, because the lots are so small, if you do have a septic system failure, it's very hard to site a new leaching field because there just is no space. So it's expensive to remediate. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the kind of scum that you see at times during Little Pond. We looked at it from the sewering point of view because with all the build out, it was economical. The pipe runs are very short between one house and the next house. The Mara Vista and portion of Falmouth Heights is immediately adjacent to the existing sewer system, and that means both pumping stations and major collection mains. The review committee that preceded the Water Quality Management Committee that now works on this issue examined the capacity and operation of the existing wastewater treatment plant and found that it's operating at half capacity. So there is room for additional flow from the lower Little Pond watershed. Currently, the facility takes in up to 500,000 gallons per day. From this lower Little Pond watershed, you would get approximately 290,000 gallons additional. And lastly, part of the reason that there is capacity at the plant and there's capacity at the pumping stations on Main Street and Falmouth Inner Harbor and the major mains is that originally it was planned that Mara Vista would be sewered. Next slide, please. This is a picture with the dashed lines that is basically our preliminary design for what's called the collection area, also called the sewer shed, for the lower Little Pond estuary. It includes all of the Mara Vista Peninsula up to Stowers, Nickerson, those streets there. I should go this way. This is the portion of Falmouth Heights that drains into Little Pond, comes up through Davis Straits. Here's the Falmouth Mall, and then on up Davis Straits as far as Alphonse Street, which is right up here, and that's just short of the intersection with Sandwich Road. Alphonse Street, this is a valley that extends all the way down and has a little stream through it, and then ultimately into Little Pond itself. And so this is a low point, and we are looking at having a pumping station up there and another pumping station in the mall area to deal with all of the effluent that is collected from this sewer shed. Next slide, please. The collection system is gravity, which most people would understand. Just a pipe out your house, goes into a pipe in the street, flows by gravity. But because of the shape of the peninsulas, it is going to be necessary to have a low pressure system for roughly 50% of the collection area. This is a technology that was not available in 1983. In 1983, everything had to be by gravity, and it meant the pipes had to be really deep. And that led to a lot of disruption in the roads and problems of constructing sometimes in groundwater. With low pressure systems, this is what you'll see in your backyard. Basically looks like the top of a trash can. And underneath is a cylinder that is 10, 12 feet deep. And inside that has a collection system where effluent from your house flows into a well, and then a little pump triggers on when the water level reaches a certain point and pumps it into the street into small pipes, which then lead to the pumping station, the big pumping station. Next slide, please. All right. The price for doing the design for the lower Little Pond watershed is $4.5 million. This, everybody, yes, right. The article that passed in 2011 used a funding strategy that is being proposed for most of the wastewater issues in the town, and that's both the demonstration projects and the sewering. It consists of issuing new debt in the same amount as old debt that is being retired. Buildings that we've already paid off, roads that we've paid off, and so it does not raise the tax rate. I'm going to need some water, if somebody could find some. It does not raise the tax rate. So the article that we have before town meeting now, the article we had in 2011, and subsequent articles as we move forward with all of these projects. Thank you very much. Do not raise the tax rate. The total amount that we've used the phrase window of opportunity, basically when does debt retire, old debt, that we can issue new debt. The total amount for this town meeting is $9 million. The selectmen, working with the Department of Public Works, have two articles. Article 24 that deals with Bourne's Pond and Little Pond, and then Article 25, which deals with the water filtration plant. Those costs together equal $9 million. So we are presenting to the town meeting and to the public that we are taking care of environmental issues in this town, infrastructure issues in this town, and we're doing it in a way that does not raise the tax rate. Next slide. This is just a brief picture of the wastewater treatment plant itself. There is a portion in Article 24 to do some upgrades. There is a measurement system that the DEP is requiring that we install, and that the other adjustments, which are largely like pumps, that will deal with adding the Lower Little Pond service area. Okay? And this is a summation of, again, for Article 24 from the DPW, that this totals 800,000. That is also in Article 24. Next slide. So here we have the total amount for Article 24. There's Bourne's Pond, this is the sewering for Lower Little Pond, and this is for the wastewater treatment plant, totaling 5.6. The remainder, 3.4, is in Article 25 for the water filtration plant, and the total is 9 million. Next. All right. This gives you the picture of where we're going in the next year. We are looking to pass Article 24. It then has to go on the ballot because it's a bonding issue. We will then begin a discussion, this being the Water Quality Committee, a discussion of the other financing issues that get triggered when you're dealing with wastewater. Betterments are the one that most people think of, but there is a whole host of financing for the bonding. Can we get cheaper bonds? That needs to be discussed. This will all lead to another article in 2014 where we again have old debt being retired and new debt being issued, and there you will see construction dollars for the wastewater project, for probably the water filtration plant, and for Bourne's Pond, and perhaps other things as well. And again, it will have to be on the ballot. Next. All right. These are the sorts of financing questions that we'll be discussing with the public. These will be meetings that the Water Quality Committee will hold, and ultimately a decision by the town. I think that's the last slide. There we go. All right, that's our job, is to get through this maze. And we have been holding, all our meetings are public, and we've been holding periodically these sort of general discussion sessions. And so we look forward to your comments. Thank you very much.
I'm Joan Carew, and I just want to know, what is the estimated cost per household for the sewering?
The answer is nobody knows. That list of issues that second to the last slide there that talked about how much each one of those things would affect the answer to that question. Just one example. If you borrowed the money using the town's bonding capacity, you might pay 2.5% or 3% interest. The state has a program if you qualify for 2% interest. They have another program which we could qualify for with 0% interest. That makes a difference of millions of dollars over the course of the time you're borrowing this money. That affects the cost. We don't know yet which one of those options. Whether you're bonding for 20 years or 30 years, or you could even bond for 50 years, that affects the cost per year. Whether there's a betterment at all is a question that hasn't been decided. The town has the right to do this with no betterment. The town could have a 50% betterment. It could be any number. I think, I'm not speaking for the committee now, but I think there's sort of an understanding that this is not a project designed to benefit the homeowners alone. This is a project designed to benefit the whole town and the whole region and the whole state, and the whole town, region, and state should be part of paying for it, and not just the homeowners. So I don't think you're going to see, my guess is you won't see a majority of the cost going to the homeowners. There are a lot of questions that until you know you're going to do it, we haven't been able to answer. But we will start. If the voters at town meeting and the voters at the ballot say go ahead with this design, all those questions will be taken up the next year, and they'll all come back to town meeting in 2014. So, everyone will have a crack at it at town meeting, and everyone will have a crack at it at the ballot in 2014 too. So, the answer right now is nobody knows. Mark.
This will be a long argument when it comes at town meeting, but I'd just like to point out that if the town believes that they're gonna put any kind of a large betterment on the households that are hitched up to the sewer, then I think they should consider a betterment on the households that benefit from the bridge. So it's gonna be an argument.
But funding these things is the hardest argument there is, because it's basically you're asking the question, what is fair? And everybody has a different idea about what is fair. What, you know, every piece of it is going to have to be argued out at length, and that's democracy. That's how we do things. David.
One of the issues that our local Sierra Club group is concerned about is environmental justice and paying for sewering, and especially since we have many citizens that are on fixed incomes. We have a lot of people that are either unemployed or underemployed. We have a lot of people that work on our service industries that are part of the working poor. So I would hope that when you discuss not only the cost of this, you consider the environmental justice implications on the people that are going to be hit hardest by trying to pay for it, either through betterments or as residents of the wider town.
Absolutely.
Why are, there's 3 things on the single ballot town meeting warrant article, right? There's
there's two articles. 24 deals with
three
things. And
the 3 things.
The water one is 25.
Right, so the one that deals with 3 things. It's the inlet widening, the initial plans for the sewers, and the third one was the
plant upgrades at the treatment plant.
The treatment plant upgrades. Why aren't they 3 separate articles?
You'll have to ask the selectmen. They chose to make 2 articles out of this, one being wastewater and
well, I can understand separating out the, you know, I mean, to me, they're all very big expense items which all have different issues. And it seems combining them into one article, the inlet widening, that should be standalone. It has nothing to do with the sewer plans.
It was a decision the selectmen made. We weren't part of that, but they thought, well, Mark was there, he could probably tell you.
Well, there was an argument to put them all on one article, and they thought it would pass the most easy, or it'd be the easiest way to pass it. But as far as the article you're talking about, you can split them up on town meeting floor, and that is probably what's going to happen, I believe. And I think it's the most fair and equitable way.
Any other questions, comments? Sure.
Brian Donnellan, Monot Road. Is the plan for sewering Mara Vista, the homes on the eastern side of Mara Vista, will they be hooked up to the sewer? Is that so that will clean up Great Pond?
There is a portion of Great Pond that benefits from this. The water contours that have been given to us by U.S. Geological Survey and the Massachusetts Estuaries Project show that there is a small slice along the eastern side of the Mara Vista Peninsula. If you're putting sewers in, it makes no sense to do a street and a half. You know that Mara Vista goes down the middle, and leave 4 houses at the end not hooked in. So, and also they can hook in by gravity, and that just happens to be the lay of the land.
Well, you're talking about, I'm talking about a half of the homes on the peninsula are on the eastern.
That's correct.
Portion. So,
yes.
So all of them will be hooked
all
up
of them will be hooked in.
And that benefits, all of those homes, I would think, drain into Great Pond.
They don't all drain into Great Pond. Some of, no, actually, that's what's interesting. A portion of those houses that are on the east side of Mara Vista Avenue actually do drain into Little Pond.
I stand corrected. Okay.
Yeah. But your basic question is correct. The entire street will be hooked in.
What about the homes south of Katomet Street? Will they have access to the sewer?
Okay. South of Katomet Street has an issue, has several issues. The first is what's called the wedge. And that is, they don't actually flow into Little Pond. They flow directly into Vineyard Sound. And so all of the modeling that has been done to set the standards for each of the ponds does not include those houses because they don't drain into the pond, either little or great. The second is that they are all in the 100-year wave action portion. And you really don't want to build sewer infrastructure in there. So they're not included, they're not within the sewer shed. Yes?
Yeah, the basic design of this was, we took the USGS maps and the Mass Estuaries Project map showing the watershed of Little Pond, everything that drains into Little Pond. Most of Mara Vista, that eastern part of the Heights, the mall, everything that drains into Little Pond. We said, this is the target area because Little Pond is, thanks to all these houses and stores and roads and everything, Little Pond is in terrible, terrible condition. And this is the area we're gonna try to fix first. So those were the lines that decided where this would go. It's purely, if you drop a drop of water in the ground, where does it go?
One small correction there. It's Lower Little Pond.
Lower Little Pond.
Yeah, just part of the decision was how big a bite to take of the whole apple. The watershed for Little Pond actually goes up probably a third or a half again as much going north of here. The density of the homes is not quite as great. The biological uptake on the ground's a little bit different. So we chose an area that fit in, and to a key point that Virginia mentioned, in terms of the cost of doing this entire system, it's the most cost effective because the existing downstream infrastructure is already in place for this component, whereas you start adding on, you start reaching limits of other pieces of, there's a ripple effect down below. So the next step, if we ever get there, beyond this, is another big bite of the apple.
The old,
it's now the Surfside
timeshare now.
Where does that effluent go?
what's its address? Are you?
It looks to me like it's on the wedge.
It's in the wedge. That's
So
correct.
It flows to the ocean directly. It doesn't affect the estuary. And our premise again was we're trying to restore this estuary. Hilda.
I believe the CWMP has not been approved by the state yet. I'm concerned about asking for money for a project that has not been approved. Am I correct on that?
The town is has an agreement that it will have a final CWMP approved by the state by December. There won't be any asking for construction money until after that is approved. If it isn't approved, there won't be any construction.
But what about the engineering money that we spend on a project that might not get approved?
Well, let's put it this way. If you don't spend the engineering money, it will not be approved.
Is the CWMP not going to be approved if we, at this point, I mean...
The state is not about to approve a comprehensive wastewater management plan for the town of Falmouth that doesn't include any wastewater management by sewer. That is not on their list of things that they're going to go along with.
I actually asked the EPA people that in a public meeting about a year and a half ago, and they told me that that was not true.
Well, you can...
Several people told me that that was...
Okay, fine.
That you could have a plan without a sewer, and that would be fine if you can show other ways of dealing with it.
If they could show you one place in Massachusetts where that's occurred, I'd be very interested in hearing about it.
But somebody has to be the first, but they said
it wasn't no one has been the first, let's put it that way.
I have a couple other questions.
Okay.
How many years have we worked on this plan? There has been 2 committees, right? How many years total have we had time to work on this? Is it 8 years now or 7, or between the 2 committees, how many years have we worked on it?
I'm not quite sure what your
The
question
last-
is,
Yeah, what
but the review committee was
Yeah.
2010, made
Okay.
its recommendations to
Yeah.
town meeting, which
Okay.
were accepted unanimously, 2011.
Yeah.
And that town meeting also set up a permanent committee, which is the Water Quality Management Committee that's you see in operation now.
So it has been how many years that the committees have worked on getting a plan that's now at the state level?
Yeah,
18 months, 2 years.
Okay. And do you know how much money we have spent so far on engineering, pre-planning on the engineering? I'm just curious how much money we have spent and how much time. It's just a practical question.
Okay. Are you also including the eco toilets and all of the?
We have spent very little on the eco toilets, but just the engineering on the wastewater.
Engineering
issue,
on the
yeah.
wastewater will probably be about 150,000, somewhere there. Somewhere there.
I know that it was that much for the review committee and probably another 150 for our committee over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. The Article 17 funded producing the draft CWMP, okay, which that was a year of effort. And that included additional work and the public meetings and so on. So I think it's about that.
Hilda raises a point which is worth bringing up here. The idea of sewering, obviously, we understand, is usually expensive, very controversial. It has a lot of negatives to it, and if there were any way we could have produced a plan that had a chance of approval, that had no sewering in it, we would have. That was not the case. We've heard this from every level that has anything to do with reviewing these plans. It is fair to say that the plan we submitted has less sewering than any other plan that any other town on Cape Cod has submitted. We were told at the beginning, when we first submitted this plan, that its chances of getting any kind of approval were very slim because it didn't say, how are you going to deal with all the estuaries? It didn't say $600 million. It didn't say $300 million. It said $45 million. We were told from many quarters that would not fly with these regulators. They want a plan. They wanted a plan that was going to show how you were going to deal with everything all at once. We said no. Falmouth is not doing that. Here's the 3 rules we said Falmouth is going to follow. Number 1, sewer as little as possible and pursue all the alternatives as much as possible. Number 2, only borrow money when we have a window of opportunity so we can do it without raising the taxes. What was the 3rd one? We had 3 good we had 3 good
I
ideas.
wasn't sure what your 3rd one was going to be. I'm waiting to hear.
The alternatives was the 3rd one. Okay. So, and we kept that promise, and the selectmen kept that promise. This town is doing, and our man from EPA will tell you, and the DEP will tell you, this town is leading on alternatives, in developing them, in measuring them in a way that will be meaningful for us and for other towns in the future. We are leading in the funding. No other town has said, and they may now that we've done it, say, we're only going to borrow money when we can do it without raising taxes. No other town has done that. Okay. So I think we're really on a pretty good path here, and there's no question, sewering anything is expensive. But you know how much it would have cost to sewer this exact same area back in 1983 when the town of Falmouth had its plan approved, designed? $3 million. No, they said, let's wait. Let's wait. Okay, we waited. Nothing got better. We built a mall on top of a cranberry bog. We built a house on every 5,000 square foot lot we could find. And we built bigger ones. And then we built bigger ones. And we built more. And we paved some roads. And we took all the drainage from all the rain on all the streets and the heights in Mar Vista. And we put pipes and we made sure it went straight into a little pond. We have created a sink. And we're going to fix it. Question?
Andrew Bunker, West Falmouth. one part of the plan that hasn't been addressed is exactly where the effluent is going to go. And I'm concerned about Site 7 in West Falmouth, which is currently the engineer's favorite choice. And it happens to be only 1,200 feet from Crocker Pond. So it's very, very close. We've discussed nitrogen. We've discussed how deep the pond is. We're going to look into the hydrological studies. We're going to look into a lot of different things. One area that, those are all continuing concerns, but one area that isn't spoken about a whole lot is the chemicals of emerging concern, the endocrine blockers, the pharmaceuticals that end up in the water, and other things. So naturally, there's a lot of concern up in West Falmouth about what's going on up there. I noticed on the town website, Article 24 talks about design and construction money. And it looked like a slide here said something about effluent upgrade to the treatment plant. And I know when I did Article 40, it was amended so that construction could begin on Site 7 before studies were completed. So I'm wondering if that is part of the plan.
No.
Okay.
No construction will begin before the studies are completed.
Just real quickly, at the wastewater treatment plant, I'm sorry. At the wastewater treatment plant, the last step at the current treatment plant for the current flows needs to be tweaked a little bit to do a better job of removing nitrogen for the existing flows of the existing plant. So when you saw the word effluent up there, it was talking about that component at the existing treatment plant for the existing flows, nothing to do with Site 7.
The thing about septage, nobody likes it anywhere. What the town does now with it is takes it to the plant and it reduces it to less than 3
milligrams per liter.
I can never get this right. 3 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. That is a very small amount of nitrogen. The drinking water standards the EPA sets is 10. So this is about a third of the level of what would be okay to have in your drinking water. It's very small. But what we have in terms of volume is going into West Falmouth Harbor, and we've agreed, the town has agreed, not to put any more into the West Falmouth Harbor. So the question is, if you get more from this part of town and you take it up there and treat it to that level, what do you do with it then? There is a site that has been agreed to, a swap site with the Steamship Authority, that would be outside the West Falmouth Harbor watershed. And it goes, if you put it into that site, and you can treat it so that the phosphorus level is removed to the point where it wouldn't affect any freshwater bodies downstream, which I know is your concern. And you can reduce it to the level where the nitrogen isn't going to impact any of the estuaries or any other saltwater bodies downstream. It's a reasonable site to put it. That's the current position of the town. At the last town meeting, you and others, and with the unanimous agreement of the committee, said we want these studies to be done. Every one of them is being done. At the end of the day, the committee's charge to the consultant is
Do no harm.
do no harm to any water bodies downstream from this site. If it turns out that that can't be done there, then that won't be the site. Hi.
I have a quick, short question and a follow-up to do afterwards. I'm Kristen Moritz. When you design the sewer that you're talking about, how many years is the sewer supposed to last?
100. The one in Wintola has been around since the 20s.
All right, that sort of takes me to my point, not to just repeat what Ron Smolowitz said, but when the review committee was set up, when it was 2010, I think, I know Virginia was on it, and I went to a meeting at the Morse Pond School, and I was told there was a website that we could write questions in and have answers to us. And my question was, at that point, what plans are being factored in for climate change and sea level rise, such as is being done around Boston Harbor? I never got an answer to it then, and I noted Ron's question, which I think is a really important thing, because if you're going to be voting on something that's lasting 100 years and you're putting a bunch of people's money into it, then you really need to be thinking at least 50 years ahead. I would think I mean, human beings maybe can't do it that well, but I think we need to be doing that, or else we don't feel secure in the decisions we made. And I myself would not know, I'm not a town meeting member, but if I were, I would want to know, as part of the explanation, how would a sewer be affected down in this coastal area by sea change and climate change possibilities, since it's going to take such a big investment and it's supposed to last 100 years.
Right. We have brought this issue up in talking to the engineers. We are obviously in very preliminary design. The low pressure system that I showed you for the properties that are low and it will not flow into the mains by gravity, they're watertight. Well, I mentioned that because as you get gradual sea level rise, you will also have some rise in the water table. Ultimately, I personally think you're going to have some properties down at this southern end that could easily become marsh. It goes to the question earlier about how much rise are we actually going to experience as a community. The input we are getting from DEP is you need to pay attention to every parcel that contributes to Little Pond. That's where they draw their bright line. And so that is the design that we are working on now. Once a property, I don't know, becomes condemned because it's, the water's there, can we close off these pipes? I'm virtually certain the answer to that is yes, that they can be removed. It's really good to be looking that far ahead, and believe me, we raise those questions, but at the same time, I do have to say that we're essentially dealing with the current regulatory framework, and their framework is if there's a lot there now and there's a house on there now, you need to sewer it. We're asking it of them. They don't have an answer. They don't give us an answer.
There's one place here that we're having a little controversy with the regulators,
Well,
which is down along the shore. They're enthusiastic about including those in the area to be sewered.
With pressure treated with these sealed systems.
And we are saying no, for the reasons you're citing. These areas, 100 years from now, are not going to be here. They're not contributing to the Little Pond problem. And we are not interested in asking the town to pay even more to help them for the very reasons you cite. Mark.
Everyone seems to be have great concern about sea level rise. The sea level's been rising since the glacier left West Falmouth about 18,000 years ago. And by far, erosion is a bigger concern. I mean, if you look at renderings of what Cape Cod looked like 10,000 years ago, it was twice as large. So I just want to point that out. But as far as this plan is concerned, and nobody really argues with the fact that Mara Vista it needs to be sewered, but there seems to be almost no concern put into or planning put for road water runoff and runoff in general. The 300 committee has recently purchased the old Vieira driving range, which has a wetland down there. I mean, as you said yourself, Eric, one of the problems with Little Pond is the fact that they put them all there on what used to be a bog, which is nature's filter. I mean, I think that effort should be put into the golf course to put some kind of wetland back in there and plants that uptake nitrogen. And I also think that the CPC's plan to put that Spring Bars Road project and park another 80 leaking oily cars and everything else there is wrong. It should be restored back to a wetland as it was and save the town some money.
Mark, you're right about the road runoff. And I will say, one of the things we went to town meeting with 2 years ago was to follow up and do some work on the road runoff piece. We have not done that. This committee hasn't, because everything else has just kind of ballooned. And but it's on our list. We have money set aside to do it. And you know, if we get time to take a breath, it's still on the list, and there's still money to pursue it. The road runoff has not been forgotten. It's just you can't do more than about 8 things at once, and we are. George.
My question was going to be, what can we do to help make sure that this passes at town meeting? And I think you helped answer the question. And one of the most important things that I got out of this meeting is the fact you're taking it a step at a time. Because there's going to be changes that occur to the environment, and also there's going to be technological changes that occur. And you will be able to take advantage of that. So you solved my my question, that you're doing the right thing. And it never, you know, came to me until you said that. So I hope you say that at town meeting. Okay? Yeah, okay.
Hugh Gregory from East Falmouth, and it is the steps that I'm thinking about. You have the project in Little Pond with the oysters, and the entrance to Little Pond is one of the narrowest entrances to any salt pond on the south side of the Cape. So after committing millions of dollars to the engineering study for a sewer system, what happens if in the meantime the nitrogen level in Little Pond drops, the oysters grow, you have more oysters there, and you open that channel into Little Pond to the same width as you're talking about opening the channel into Bourne Pond. And I doubt it would remove the need for all of the sewering, but it might cut the need for sewering dramatically. And it would certainly be a great embarrassment to discover that the nitrogen in Little Pond had declined dramatically after going through all of the expense for the sewer study.
Yes, I would. Cheryl Williams.
Thanks.
I don't think a lot of people are aware of the coastal area of Little Pond. And I look around the room and I want to ask, how many people have driven down Grand Avenue lately as it goes off of Elysian Avenue? Because I think if you took a look at the telephone pole, because of erosion, because of the sea level, that has to be moved over, and the curbing and the guardrails that are currently falling into Little Pond, and then if you walked around and talked to homeowners, they would say to you, yes, they fully support tidal flushing to clean out the nitrogen. However, they currently deal with flooding. There are some pumps are going all the time. So, you know, Eric, when you said, you know, because of all of the permitting with, you know, the DEP and MEPA, et cetera, it's a laborious process, but it's necessary, because that's the point in time that they would take a look at those issues. And I think that you will find, due to the history of Little Pond and where the entrance used to be before we moved it, you know, Little Pond was Lake Lehman. It was a freshwater pond. It was a lake. We, because of mucking around with it ourselves, turned the salinity into what it is today. And people fully support tidal flushing, but I'll tell you what, if you really talk to the people who live on those coastal banks, they won't support that.
That is what we found, and that's the reason we went to Bourne's Pond. That we were getting neighborhood feedback that Little Pond was different. The chances of widening it without a huge fight for many years was 0, and the gain from widening it was much less. If you doubled it, or we had a preliminary look at this, and if you doubled the width of that and made it everything you want it to be, it might take 10% of the nitrogen out. If you're going to do a demonstration project, you want to do one where you can do it, and you want to do one where it's going to show results right away. And Bourne's Pond was that place.
I live on Little Pond, Chris Shea. I live on Little Pond, Narragansett Street, and as what Cheryl said, I remember distinctly, and it's a very humbling experience to be in your kitchen cooking a piece of fish in your oven standing in 2 inches of water. And that was the result of Hurricane Sandy. And to make matters worse, the opening then was occluded, and so that remained for, I think it was 3 days. So Mother Nature is what she is, and she's very capricious, and once you do something, and you're off in the wilderness. So I think that would really need a lot of head scratching and some major concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, the one thing we've learned is every one of these water bodies is different. They've got their own little personalities. They've all got different populations around them. They've all got different flows and things. They're very complicated bodies, and the solution for every one is going to be different. 5 years from now, we're going to know about all these demonstration projects and how well they work. And hopefully we can apply them in appropriate locations to all 15 estuaries. And but until the demonstration projects are done, we have to move ahead with what we know now. What we know now is Bourne's Pond can gain really rapidly by doing the opening there now. Little Pond can gain really rapidly if there's any place that should be sewered first, it should be there. We're learning as we go along. We picked the sort of the biggest bang for the buck at the locations, and understanding that the buck is just what the town can afford to pay at any given time. That's been our limitation on this whole project, and so could we do more someplace else if people wanted to pay for it? Probably. Could we do things sooner? Maybe. But as George says, we're doing it step by step, learning how to do it right.
I was just going to say, it sounds like the residents could benefit from a dike that could be open or closed.
Talk to Cheryl about that.
Hi, I'm Brian Donnellan again. I do not own a piece of property in the Little Pond watershed, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I do have a neighbor who's very proud of his upgraded Tidal V system, and I spoke to him just before coming to this meeting, and he's probably fairly typical of probably a bunch of other homeowners in that watershed. And my question concerns the mechanism by which people will be asked or compelled to hook up to this new system. How do you go about doing that? I mean, how does the town require someone who's got a perfectly good functioning, maybe brand new Tidal V system to hook into your brand new sewer system? I mean, you send the police, you send a constable, how does it work?
Well, it's about time to find the right side of this. You're basically asking a question that goes to the word fairness again. So the lower Little Pond watershed, as we've made progress towards looking at the area that we think we need to put the sewers in, and we're on a path to get that done. The committee met with the Board of Health. I also serve on the Board of Health as well. We also took the opportunity to go back and sort of do a review of how many of the homes around Little Pond have a Tidal V system and how many don't. You care to make a guess? 15% have a Tidal V? Yeah, that would be a high number, but not too high. So the Board of Health is now, as anybody comes in this area, we're advising them of where we're at, and are hovering much like the Board of Health did when they did the new Silver Beach, of establishing a window, basically saying you can keep the system you have. It needs to be monitored so that you have a quote a problem with the system, because a new sewer is coming down your street in the very near future. Obviously, if that whole program falls apart, you then have to come back and fix the system. But as somebody that sits on the Board of Health, I would like to tell you that for those homes in this area around Little Pond that have come in with a plan to put a Title V system onto a 4,000 square foot lot that has a 2 or 3 bedroom building on it already, and the size of the unit you have to build. My first evening on the Board of Health, when somebody put a plan in front of us and was looking for 6 variances to Title V in order to approve it, including poly barriers, some innovative dosing systems, a range of things, I was like, why would anybody do this? So I think this is under that kind of the window of the money for the town. There's also a window of opportunity here I think we're looking at in terms of a number of people in that area. I will confess to having owned a piece of property up in New Silver Beach and gone through, somebody telling me what it might cost or might not cost and eventually cost, spending close to 5 or 6 years nursing a system along with 4 teenagers in the house and 2 adults and people that like to come visit. It was not a casual exercise on my part to keep track of what was going on. But I moved before the sewer came in for other reasons. But it was a balancing act. So I think we can't guarantee anybody an absolute right now, but we're not ignoring the more immediacy of the Little Pond area and advising people accordingly. I mean, the physical aspect of when it actually comes by is a pipe from your basement or whatever over to the new system. But coming back a little bit, if I can, Virginia touched upon this. I'm just going to do this. The places where you see these dots, I believe, are gravity sewers, Virginia?
It was actually color-coded, but it doesn't
come up all, but
doesn't show too well.
But where these dots are, these are gravity sewers.
Right, and then the
portions
lower
that don't have the dots on them
are the pressure.
So if you're in the
Low
gravity
pressure.
sewer area, it's a 5 or 6 inch pipe from your house to the sewer main in the street. When they come by and build it, they leave a turn-off connection to your property line, and you get somebody to tie it in. If you're in the other area, the current plan is for the town to buy these cans, and when the sewer system comes and gets built, the town installs this can on your property, makes sure it gets properly wired up, and then the town monitors and maintains that can as part of the town's sewer system, okay?
Now, for my neighbor who does have the full-blown Title V brand-new system, will someone like him be required to hook into the new sewer system? Or
We have not crossed the boundary of mandatory tie-ins or allowances against people that, you know, we have kicked around that if you sign up for the composting toilet program that we're offering, I believe we're going down the path of getting those folks relief, that if you invest in getting rid of your nitrogen another way, that you don't get forced into having to then turn around and get rid of your nitrogen in a way that is a double hit to you.
Carl.
Just one clarification. It was a question Hilda was talking about. Is the permitting and design fee required to get the final permitting?
To get the final permitting?
You said you'd have the permit in December. The engineering and design, is that required to go forward to get the permit?
No, what we'll have in December is an approved Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan.
Right.
One of the elements of that is that we are going ahead with the design and that we are going ahead with construction, a request for construction money in 2014. Part of the plan is this timetable that we've laid out. If we start right out by not doing the first thing, that does not bode well for the plan.
But if the wastewater management plan is not approved, has the town spent engineering design money for a project that will never happen?
Well, I think there will be a plan approved. and it will have this particular piece in it. What we're dealing with now is, we gave them this plan and they've sent back questions. They haven't said, don't do any of these things. They haven't said, we don't like any of these things. They just said, we have a lot of questions that you need to answer, which is normal when you submit a plan like that. If the town votes this money, and it come December, we haven't, the plan is not approved by the state, things will come to a halt as far as that goes. We won't be able to go to the town for the next year to ask them to spend money on building anything, because obviously there'll be no permit in hand. Mark.
Believe it or not, I'm going to end this on a positive note. We started out at this thing looking at $650 million to sewer every house south of Route 28. I'm going to predict to you now that the chances are 50-50 that sewering there may be the final sewering that we do in this town, with the alternatives and other methods and what's coming down the road. Because, what's his name? George Freegon from Greenfields, he has that experimental thing. It's about the size of a phone booth. You put it in your backyard, you hitch it up to your existing septic, and it brings it down well below 3. So as much as I don't like to spend this kind of money, and I think this is going to be quite likely could be the end of all the large money that we spend on this project, and we can keep our existing sewer plant. It's looking a hell of a lot better than it did 2 years ago. It's not perfect, but it's pretty positive.
Amen. And to leave on a positive note by Mr. Finneran is a fine time to leave. Thank you all very much for coming. We'll be around for questions or comments, and thank you all for your input. It's really been helpful.